All right. So, guys, version red flags and green flags of dating or relationships. Um, I think we had an interesting thing watching the girls do theirs and really thinking through what from a girl's perspective. And I think it's interesting to think about it from a guy's. And I'm single, obviously, and have been on dates and meeting new people and things like that. And so obviously, there's definitely things that I look for and things that I hope to try to avoid. Um, so again, I guess we'll kind of kick it off with that. I mean, to me personally, I even put, let's say if I'm on a dating app or have a profile with something where I'm telling people on a date, like what I'm actually looking for, it's always things like I just, first and foremost, as I've gotten older, I want to have a person I can have fun with. And so that kind of just means like sense of humor, right? Like, um, I tell tons of jokes if I'm in a situation out in public. Sometimes, I'm commenting on things or, making observations. And I just love that kind of free flowing, like say anything, do anything. So for me, a big one is definitely having a person that you can just laugh and joke with and have a good time with.
For sure. That's one of your green flags.
That's definitely a green flag. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I think I totally agree. I think personality is just such a big thing. And this is going to sound really obvious, but I think when someone is really nice, that is a huge green flag. Now, anyway, now that I'm
Yeah.
married, and what I mean by that is, you know, you always hear the term "nice guys finish last." Sometimes when people are too nice, it's almost annoying. But when you're spending the rest of your life with somebody and they're just nice to you because they're a nice human,
Yeah.
I mean, there's tremendous value there. That's a big one for me.
Well, what's an example for you of like someone like what would be an action that someone would take if you just either met them or that has some consistency that you feel like is like, oh, that's a nice person. That's what a nice person would do.
Well, I think there's multiple avenues, right? It's not just the thoughtfulness and the gift giving. It's just seeing how people interact in public with others. The way that they talk to strangers, whether it's your waitress, for example, if you're out on a date, how they treat the people that are serving you.
For sure.
Um, Really, just somebody being a nice human. I think it
Yeah.
speaks
Yeah.
volumes to their character.
No, and I think I've noticed things like that too. Where like let's say for example, God, what was one example? I think I was walking with a girl and like we were coming back to my house, right? And then there was like a little bit of how like if you're outside, the leaves or little like tree debris is like on the
Agreed.
ground. I
Right.
remember she like there was like a little path and like she's kind of swept it over with her foot to get it in back into like the grass area versus it being in the pathway. And so like even something very small like that just like that little action of like, hey, I care, right? Like that kind of takes that you take notice of things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like
Here's a weird example. So
yeah,
I actually took a girl to Europe once,
okay,
and it was her first time there. Great experience, seeing a new place. And we were in Venice, where there's tons of water, and apparently when it rains, like the tide
okay,
rises, and I mean there was like water coming into the hotel, and I guess that was totally normal.
wow,
So I go down to the front desk and I purchase some of those big like knee-high rubber boots, so that you can kind of walk around in them.
yeah,
And she was kind of taken aback because the boots were ugly and she wanted boots with like leopard prints on them that she saw somebody else have.
okay,
So it wasn't that she wasn't being a nice person, but to be honest, I mean that to me was just I could have thrown up. I mean it was
yeah,
it was a big it was very telling for me.
yeah. And it's funny how we all have a definition of nice, and we all as human beings know what nice means. I think the problem is like it's how do you recognize those characteristics when you're in a moment, and I think
Right.
one of the things that I've been talking a lot about in these types of videos or even offline has been this idea of yeah, say what you want, but also know what it means and like how to recognize it. Because a lot of times we don't. We go, well, it was nice that someone did XYZ or they said XYZ, but those little moments of well, you didn't have boots to protect your stuff, but
Right.
someone went out of their way and got them. And instead of just being, grateful for it, it's like there's a complaint or, those little things of, the way a person will, call you back in a certain time or show up, on time for a date, let's say, versus
Mhm.
being late or just certain little things that like they're part of a person's characteristic. Like um, I was telling one girl actually, it's funny. Like I was on one of the dating apps, and this one girl on her profile, every single picture she had, she was smiling. And I'm saying to her, I'm like, look, I've never seen a profile where every single photo a girl
Right.
was smiling. Because
That's great.
most of the time there's some, you're trying to look sexy in one photo. This is I never. I'm like, that would be a pretty clear indication that a person's nice,
Yeah,
or has a good spirit.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, to me, I think that is the biggest green flag. And I say this, having been married for 3 years, my wife is very nice, and I
Yeah.
try my best to be nice to her, and we just get along. I mean, we literally don't fight. There's no bickering.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of buddies that are in these relationships or are dating.
Yeah.
Um, and just some of the things that women will say to them, it's just mean, or it's
Yeah.
just not
Yeah.
nice. And if it's happening when you're dating, or if it's happening when you're not that far along in your relationship, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is I think as we're both talking about this and we're saying for one, I'm noticing those things. You're married to a person like this, like there's results when it comes to it.
Yeah.
But also the idea that as we get older and more mature and we really know what we're looking for, not once yet have we mentioned how a person looks.
Right.
Like not once have
Right.
we been like, oh, but they have to be hot and nice. It's like, no, like just that alone can go a long way. And it means so much because like you said, if you're going to spend the rest of your life with a person, you want to have someone cool to interact with.
I had this argument just the other day, Sunday night, actually. A buddy of mine who very stubborn. He couldn't wrap his head around it. He's like, there has to be an attraction. Like, what are you talking about? The hot factor has to be there. I'm like, I get that, but like most things, that goes away. I mean, God forbid, what happens if your house sets on fire and you get third-degree burns all over your body? You know what I mean? Like things
Yeah.
can change.
Yeah.
And you're right, the appearance, I mean, things like that don't matter. Now, 10 years ago, it may have been a different conversation for both of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and look, I mean, appearance does matter, right? Like I do agree that you have to be attracted to someone, but I
For
think
sure.
it's definitely in a like a relative term, right? So meaning maybe 10 years ago, I would have said, well, if she's 95% hot, right? 5% nice, I'll take. But now you're like, well, you're weighing it differently, right? You might say, well, I want someone, and this kind of will go into my next green flag, which is to me like a person having a goal or an ambition or an aim.
Mhm.
And when I say that, I don't mean just financially or business wise or career wise. It could be anything, like just having something that you have some passion about, something that you enjoy doing, something that is a goal and you're on a path to achieving it, right? So I might say now, like, yeah, I want to be attracted to you, but I want you to have this, I want you to be nice. And all of those things are a factor. So it's not, 95% and the rest is five and let's just sprinkle it in. You should have elements, like significant elements of all those things, because those are the things that are going to last.
Right, right. That's interesting. So would it be a turn off or a red flag if they didn't?
I think so. Yeah, I think, and I think the reason is because like we're talking about being nice. If someone doesn't have a goal or an aim, well, what tends to happen is what, like we all do, we get into routine. So we have a job, we wake up, we make our coffee, we go to work, we're on calls, um, and the routine consumes your day. And for the most part, nobody really loves their job. Like where, hey, I have to go to work and get paid for the time that I give to this company. So if you don't have a thing that you enjoy doing, and I don't mean like, oh yeah, I enjoy sitting on the couch and watching TV, because that's more like a mindless thing that's just happening and you're passing time with. I mean like a thing that you're like, look, like I want to be a great family member to my family. I want to, volunteer because I love helping people in this way. I want to improve my city. I mean, some goal, because those are the things that sustain you in the long term, right? Those are the
Yeah.
things that when life gets tedious or boring, or you're in a rut, or we have something like COVID come up, like what are you going to do to occupy your mind? What are you going to do to occupy like your spirit, so to speak, right?
Or are you just gonna fall
Yeah,
apart?
it's important. It's important.
For sure. All right, I got another green flag for you, and this is kind of weird. So this isn't really a long-term thing, but one thing that I always appreciated when dating was someone that would at least offer to pay the bill when the bill came. Now, I would never let that happen. I am traditional and I always wanted to take care of the bill.
Absolutely.
But I think there's a big difference between someone just kind of looking at you when the bill comes, or reaching for their purse and at least pretending that they're gonna. That's all I'm asking. Just pretend.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me.
No, and I think that goes back into like what we were saying as far as like nice and character and those type of things, that you
Right.
know, even though if the girl knows she has no intention of paying, and even if she knows that you know that you're guaranteed going to pay, it's just
Just fake
the gesture of it.
it.
Well, because it's
Absolutely.
that's what a nice person would do. A nice person would go, well, do you need help, or can I, you know, can I pay the tip, or you know, something, right? But
Yeah.
I
And I also think it speaks to how that person could be in the future, right? I mean, you know, is that going to be a habit that repeats itself when you're going out and looking at Gucci bags and everything else? You know what I mean?
I totally agree. I totally agree. And again, nice transition. It gets me into my third green flag, which is someone who is, and I'm going to use the word loyal, like, you know, loosely, but I'm going to also relate to like problem solving, meaning like, you know, a person who understands what they want in a sense, so they're willing to fight problems, because inevitably, I don't care who you are, or you know, if you combine two people's lives, regardless, there's going to be issues, there's going to be problems, and even if those people are perfect, life alone, you know, the external world will create problems.
Absolutely.
So when there are problems in life, like, how do you handle them? How do you deal with them? Do you have a partner who just breaks down and cries and like says, I don't want to deal with this anymore, or I quit, or, you know, how do you handle any situation that's uncomfortable? Because we're all going to deal with them no matter what, no matter how, well, no matter what point we get to our lives, we're going to get to a place where we're going to say, damn, I didn't see that coming, or damn, that was difficult, or, you know, hey, we have to deal with this now.
Right.
So like a person being not only loyal to you and the partnership, but also can really problem solve a little bit and doesn't get rattled by every little thing. I think that kind of relates to a little bit of what you're saying towards the end there.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, just being married, I mean, you're right. I've got a stepson, which means that I've got his father in my life for the next X amount of years. And whether that's buying a house or careers or losing loved ones, um, you know, as a team, as a partner, you know, can you guys figure it out and work through it, or are you going to fall apart? And I think that's, you know, it's all rainbows and butterflies in the beginning, but when life gets real and life happens, you know, that's when things start to change. That's a great
It's
one.
important. Yeah, no, it's important. And I think, you know, the characteristics, I think of everything we're saying, from, you know, being a nice person to, you know, having some goals or aims, to being able to be a problem solver, those things are going to last pretty much your entire life.
Right.
If you're at your core that kind of person, I believe you could take that person and put them in almost any situation, and they're going to do okay, because they're going to just have a good, cheerful, you know, kind, accommodating disposition. They're going to work hard for something, and they're not going to be rattled, and that's a good recipe for a good life.
And guys who don't pay attention to those things, I mean, it could be a catastrophe in the future, because
Yeah.
you know, it could be great in the beginning, but
Yeah, no, and I think this is the great part about having the duality of the conversations, because listen, I mean, everything that we're saying also applies to men, but like, this is from our point of view with women, right? Is that,
right.
you know, we're looking for certain things, and we know that what are the characteristics and qualities that are valuable, and we have to be aware of those. So yeah, you're right. Guys that aren't looking for those, they're fooling themselves too, right?
Yeah.
Because you can be with this person that you think is like super fun or hot or whatever, but over time, you know, it's going to fizzle out, because the core things aren't going to be there. So
Right. Exactly.
let's get into those. We'll get into the red flags then. Yeah.
All right. All right. What do you
What's
got?
your first red flag?
So my first red flag, and again, this might sound funny, but you know, there's a big difference for, I shouldn't say the big difference, but I think a lot of people have had conversation about the cell phones facing up or facing down. Right now, I've heard the argument that, you know, sometimes people put their cell phones facing down because they don't want to be distracted by the notifications when they're on a date. And I'm sorry, I totally get that, and I think I've done that in professional settings before. Where I think it matters is when you continue to see. I think you, as a guy or as a girl, you've got a gut feeling, right?
Sure.
So for me, there's a big difference between, or I should say, I know the difference between when a girl has her phone face down because she's trying to be engaging and respectful, versus, you know, she might have another date in 30 minutes and she's trying to, you know, trying to hide something.
Sure.
It sounds kind of funny. I think just coming from bad relationships, you know,
Sure.
I've seen it a lot, and you get this feeling, it makes you feel some type of way. And to me, it's just a big red flag. Because if you think about the opposite, imagine if you're on a date with a girl who gets up to go to the bathroom and leaves her phone on the table with you, and just always does those little things to make you feel comfortable. I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think as you're saying all that, what it kind of evokes for me is this idea, because I would say for myself, and I would bet a lot of people, the face down thing really is more about not being distracted, because I think we're all so programmed. You hear a chime, you hear a bell, you hear a thing, and you just look. And so even if you don't intend to, your focus does get taken off. So I'd say like it probably would depend on how a person reacts in either of those situations, because you could have a person whose phone is face up and they're not paying attention to you,
Right.
right? Or even if they don't look at the phone, they're just like, oh, like, okay, cool. Like, but they're not following the conversation. They're not listening. You could have a person with their phone face down and could be the same thing, or they could be completely engaged. So if that person has their phone face down and they're completely engaged, then to me, I go, oh, okay, well, great. Like they weren't distracted by the phone, or they weren't, you know, I don't know if I would go directly into the motive, because I'm going to say, well, what's the actual action that's happening in the moment? And I've been on dates where, let's say, a person is literally on their phone and like, oh, hold on, like my sister's texting, and you're like,
Right. And
okay, like,
and you're right about the motor. I mean, it sounds, when I say it, it sounds like it's coming from a jealous place, and it's not at all. Um, it's just something that, and maybe it stems from my past
sure,
relationships, right? Which obviously didn't work out, where I kind of have that ingrained in
right.
my head. Because you're right, there are situations where, you might be with a girl who has kids and she needs to make sure that her phone
Absolutely.
is with her,
And I think the way that the
Um,
person's going to respond is going to be a big indicator as to like their motive, right? Like if that, like the girl I'm telling you about who's like picks up the phone is like my sister, and you're picking up the phone for your sister every time, like, okay, that has nothing to do with another
yeah,
date or another boyfriend. It's just, that just shows me that you're just absent-minded. Like you, like I'm actually in the middle of a
right.
sentence and you don't even like, it's like, oh yeah, here we go. You're like, okay, hold on, okay, take your time, but um because I'm very aware of like even the perception of it. So say for example, if I know no one's gonna call, I don't have another date, I at least for myself personally want to be respectful enough where my attention doesn't get drawn off, because a lot of times even two on dates, right? Like we might be in uncomfortable situations where it's a first date, you don't really know where you're at. Maybe you're at a new restaurant or a new bar. You're with a new person. You're trying to like not only really engage in what they're saying, but really be present in the moment. And every little distraction, like when the waiter comes up at an awkward moment, or something happens in the restaurant, then your phone just becomes
You're on
another
your phone.
thing, right? That like, so to me, I've always looked at it like that, that it's not about a deception thing. It's more about, I want to try to do the best that I can to give you 100% of me in that moment. And even if I don't, end up liking you, or it doesn't really, we don't really click, I still want to at least give it the best shot that I got.
I like what you said about perception, because I think that that is everything, right? It's how are your actions being perceived,
For sure.
and I'm the same way. I mean, if I think it gives a better perception for me personally, if you just don't see my phone, if it's in my pocket, if I
Yeah.
don't touch it, if I don't look at it, and you don't know it exists, then you know that I'm engaged,
And you're
and I'm
present.
present. And I think it's just all about
Yeah.
perception. I like
All right.
that.
I'll get into to my first one. So I wrote down unrealistic. Okay. Now I'm gonna
Okay.
say, give some stories that, some of them will sound harsh and crude and whatever, but I do think that they're very relevant, because especially at a place in my life where, knowing me, it's like I spent so much of my life working really hard, sacrificing, saving, and building myself up as a person to become, successful, intelligent, and like have a certain level of lifestyle, right? And so I also want people that I'm around, and also especially anybody I would date, to understand that you really have to understand sometimes, I think, what that takes, and appreciate it. So being realistic is more about the idea that it's not that you're not a good person, but but one of the things that irks me about people in general in our society today is that so many of us are unrealistic, right? So many of us believe that we deserve things when we haven't earned anything. And I think that especially applies when you meet new partners, and you say, again, from my point of view, I meet a new girl and it's like she expects, because she's pretty, that she can get away with everything, or that beauty equates to everything else in the world, that like, oh well, anybody should want to be with me because I'm just hot and that's it. Or you know
It's not
and or the opposite
realistic.
of that is that like maybe a girl is getting older and they're not as beautiful as they once were, but they're so focused on beauty because that's been their MO their whole life, that they still believe they deserve the highest quality guy, and you go, well, wait a minute, like, if you're older now, and again, maybe you don't have a great job, you don't really have any investments, you don't have any money in the bank or anything saved, but again, you want the Gucci bag and Chanel bag and travel, and I want someone to take me here, and I want to go to the nicest restaurants, and it's like, okay, like, it's not that you don't deserve it, but it's just that you're being unrealistic about how to get it, right? Like, it's very unlikely that you're going to be, a woman who's, up there in age and not as beautiful as she was. And maybe you come with whatever baggage, bad relationships or children, or, a history of not working hard or putting yourself in a better place, but you still think you want, okay, you see someone on someone's profile. I want a guy who's never been married, no kids, makes good money, will take me out, is funny. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking like, good luck, because that's, you want the perfect guy, but you're not trying to work hard to be the perfect girl. Like, that to me is unrealistic. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't strive for the best partners that you can get, but you should be realistic, right? Like, if you've made yourself the person that you believe is great, you should go for great, but you have to be realistic.
Do you think that people's idea of realistic varies?
Well, I think it varies based on probably a lack of thinking. I don't know if it varies in terms of, in reality.
Right? Because to us, realistic could be right or wrong, whereas others, I'll give you an example. I think so. In one of my past relationships, she believed that guys could not have girlfriends.
Okay.
Now this is kind of different, but to me, I thought that the expectation that I would just stop talking to every friend that I've ever had that's a female, to me, that's unrealistic. In her head, it's completely logical and a realistic ask. So we never saw eye to eye on a lot of different things that I thought were realistic versus what,
but I guess that still kind of relates to my point, right? Is that she's only just saying that based on her wants, not, well, wait a minute, have I thought about the relationship that Brian has with these women?
So you're saying I was right.
Well, and again, I would say you're right only based on the idea that if they truly were your friends, the evidence would show, right? So if she's around you and your girlfriends and you guys are flirting and this, okay, well, maybe she has a right to say that, right? But meaning if I've been with you and I've seen the dynamic that you have, and I see how you interact with your friends, and I see how you guys are in each other's lives, that's the work that I had to do to then make that assessment, which would become, in my mind, more realistic. If I'm just like, oh no, you guys can't do that, it's like, well, why? If you've done no work to understand why, and you just say that, to me, that's unrealistic. So no different than a girl saying that, she wants, Brad Pitt looking guy who's Dave Chappelle level funny, who's, Elon Musk level smart, but who's also, Ryan Gosling in The Notebook sweet. And she's, she's not even up to par to that level. Like, that to me is an unreal. That's, again, without the sake of just coming across like as a mean person, just dissing someone.
I know what you mean.
We all know what I mean. It's like, don't expect that, but then you're not trying to be that. Right. Or you're not trying to work to be. The line I've always said is, okay, if you want that guy, work to be the kind of woman that guy would want. Right?
For sure. And it's funny. So that brings me to my red flag. And this is a very obvious one, but I think it's so important.
Okay.
Jealousy. So I think it's kind of hard to identify in the beginning stages when you're first dating.
Yeah.
But, how does a girl that you're dating respond to you when you're with your girlfriends, or to you when you're on the phone, or to you when you're sending text messages? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I honestly believe that jealousy is the biggest poison of any relationship, and it's just absolutely terrible. So for me, I mean, that's a big thing that I look at is, wow, this girl could really hang out with my friends and be a part of our group. She's not. When I came to LA to visit you, I left my wedding ring there. And it wasn't a problem, right? But I think most guys would get murdered for that, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I just think it's, And I honestly just took it off and forgot to put it on.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine having to go home and deal with 3-4 weeks of hell, and accusations of cheating and everything else, just because I don't like to sleep with it on. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No,
So,
and I think, the audience is definitely getting a theme of your past relationships of
yeah,
phone
right.
and the jealousy and the
Yeah, absolutely.
girlfriends. But again, I think, but it brings up a great point for me that, the idea that our history does create our future, and what we've
Absolutely.
been through as experiences it does color our future. So if you've been with
100%.
jealous people who've been accusatory and, haven't been trusting, it's going to color the way that you see everything. And that's why, again, a lot of times if I'm talking to my girlfriends or people that I know, I'm saying, look, don't be so careless or reckless with the people that you choose to date, because those people are going to color your relationships. They're going to color how you see relationships. They're
Absolutely.
going to color how you. So when you meet a guy like me, right, and I go, oh, I'm giving you a complete blank slate. You're going to come into it with those things, and I go, oh wow, I can very quickly recognize, like, okay, this person has been through these things, and they're not really recognizing what's realistic here. But that's not necessarily all their fault. It's because, well, when you chose the guy that was mentally or verbally abusive, or that cheated on you, or that did all these things, it's not at all your fault. But you have to understand that the accumulation of having those experiences colors the way you look at relationships.
Absolutely. And it's important that you learn from it, right?
Yeah.
And not let it color it in a bad way. So meaning,
Yeah.
when I got out of my last bad relationship, I was not in any rush to get in another relationship again, because I just thought, I'm like, I don't want to deal with that again, right?
I want to be able to have my phone facing up.
Exactly. However, when I met somebody that was
Yeah.
the exact opposite and was showing me that she was a nice human and that she wasn't jealous and that she trusted me, and that is really what pushed me to go out and buy a ring and get engaged, because I realized, like, it's
Yeah.
not all bad out there. There are some really good humans out there, and I have a really good thing going.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that illustrates the point that the proof is in the pudding, right? That, like, when you saw very different actions, it actually made you act differently. And then your
Absolutely.
choice to propose and do all these things was because, you experienced this stuff. You realize, hey, I don't want to have a relationship like that.
Right.
And
Ever.
now that I'm seeing this person who's not showing those signs, wow, this is really great. And there's some proof there.
Yeah.
And,
I can do
again, I
this for
think
the rest of my life.
you're going to identify with this next one, because I know your situation is very much not like this. But my next red flag is, again, being super materialistic.
Mm.
And again, I think everyone's going to know on the surface what that means. But kind of back to my part about being realistic in life. If you want to have nice things, drive a nice car, go on nice trips, like, my MO with everyone and my motto is, like, earn it. Right.
Mm.
So I'm not saying, as a guy, I wouldn't take you on a trip, but if I found the right girl, I would take her anywhere, buy her anything. But I would want to know that you've earned it, in the sense of, like, either you're earning it by being the person that you are that makes me want to be with you, or B, you're earning it on your own. And there's a lot of women I've met who will say things like, oh, well, I make my own money, I've earned all these things. But then they expect, like, okay, well, but you're the man, you have to do this, this.
Right.
You have to pay for this, or you have to do that. And you go, well, okay, like, that's fine if you're expecting that, but why are you expecting it? And so if you're materialistic because you've truly earned everything that you have, and you've done it in the right way. And I don't mean it in the sense of, like, how, yes, you have a job and you have decent credit and you can go out and leverage yourself to the hilt and buy, Chanel bags and a Mercedes Benz and all this kind of stuff, but you're 50,000 in debt and you've got, $2,000 in savings, right? And you don't have any assets, you don't have anything else. Yeah, you could buy it, but it doesn't mean you've earned it, right? And so you're in a position now where you go, anybody can buy these things and have these things, but did you really earn them? And a person who wants them without having earned them, in my mind, is a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And just to kind of give some unsolicited advice to all the guys out there, I mean, when you have somebody that's truly not, again, it just makes a world of difference, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my wife will literally text me sometimes and be like, babe, I'm at Target. I see this dress that I really want. It's $12. Can I buy it? And I love that. And, obviously that makes me want to do more for her and everything else. But
Yeah.
it's just so important in so many different aspects, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
Just because I realize that the opposite. I mean, I've met a lot of guys that are dating girls or are married to women that literally have spending problems and are spending all of their money on
Yeah.
garbage, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, there's levels to it for sure, but I think it's definitely an important red flag to look out for, because if it exists, it could be a problem.
Yeah. Oh, and I think, the point that you're bringing up that's making me think the additional layer of that is that really how much that colors everything else in your relationship. So,
Right.
when your wife's at Target saying, "Hey, can I buy this?" That kind of evokes trust because it's like I know that if we're ever in a hard time, she's not going to go
She's
crazy,
not going to go
right?
buy it. Right.
And then the opposite side of that is that like the girl or man who's in a relationship with someone and they're just spending money recklessly, they're not even telling you, like they just come home with a new bag or a new pair of shoes and you know that they can't afford it, or that maybe you guys as a couple's finances don't aren't up to par to be able to afford those things.
That
So they're
bill's
like, whatever, like it's fine, like we can afford it right now. And a person who's not thinking of the big picture, it's harder to trust that person. It's harder to think about the long term with them because you go, what happens if I get sick one day? Like you've spent all of our money on purses, right? Or what happens if we get into a bad rut? Like you're not the kind of person that I can depend on to make me think that you have a certain level of priority. That like your priority is I'm going to do all the right things first, and then if there's extra or I've earned it, yeah, you can have whatever you want. But there should be some kind of hierarchy of priority in your life.
Yeah, and there's a trickle effect. It starts with the
Yeah.
purses, and then it's we got to have a nicer house than them, or
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it creates problems.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean I think that goes over a lot of stuff. I think that goes over a lot of lists. Anything we missed, you
You
think?
know, I have one more for you, and I think it's a red flag when you can't identify that someone has a sense of independence. So I call it OAS,
Okay.
which stands for over aggressive syndrome, right?
Okay.
Um, and to me, there's just tremendous value in dating somebody that could say, you know what, your boys are going golfing for 8 hours on Sunday, like go have fun. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Compared
Yeah.
compared to, I don't think there's anything wrong with being clingy and affectionate and everything else, but I do think that when you're in a committed relationship, you have to have your own lives, whether that's,
Yeah.
that could be anything. And I've seen a lot of relationships where guys, they're like, dude, I would do anything just to be able to go to the bar for 2 hours with the boys. You know what I mean? Just to be able to sit on the couch and watch what I want to watch for an hour.
Sure. Sure.
So I think, I don't know how, I don't know. I guess you can't identify that when you're dating. I think
Yeah, I think
it can
so.
start early. I mean, does she get
Yeah.
upset if you're not with her every minute of every day?
Well, I think if we weave the connection between everything we've said, that would start with something like, am I at least pretending to offer to help pay the bill?
Right.
Am I showing up to a date on time? Am I, not looking at my phone every 5 minutes? Like all of those characteristics would indicate that like this person is very selfish or self-absorbed or narcissistic. And that when push comes to shove, it's going to be, well, it's what I want, right?
Right.
Like, oh, well, if you're sitting on the couch with me, we're watching what I want. Or you want to go out with your boys, like, no, you can't do that because I'm not getting anything.
We haven't spent enough time. Right.
Right. And that is a completely narcissistic kind of way of behaving, right? So I think and I think that's what I'm saying. All of this is so interesting of how a person who's not materialistic, a person who, can be trustworthy or is a problem solver or hardworking or has earned things, they all kind of weave together to make this picture of a person where you go, yeah, a really great person who's independent and going to have those qualities is not going to be, worried about every time you want to do something and it has to be their way or the highway. And
Right.
to your point, this idea of, being independent and not overly aggressive, right? Like that thing comes from an idea of, well, I'm the beautiful one who you're supposed to take care of. And
Mhm.
it's about me. Like this relationship isn't 50-50. It's about what I want.
Right.
And I think some of those signs really are there. I think some of those signs can be identified early on, and especially as you go through enough time with a person, for sure.
Do you think there's such thing as a unicorn?
I think for each individual person, yes. I mean, probably not a universal unicorn.
I think you've said it before, something along the lines of, you got to find that good mixture. But if they have a majority of the things that you're looking for,
Yeah. Well, so I mean, say for a person like me, right? Like again, because I love to be just like silly and crazy and dumb, and I'll say crazy, inappropriate stuff. part of like my unicorn, personality for a person would be that they can deal with that. They're not like, oh, God, shut up. Like, I'm allowed to kind of just be me. So what I might define as a unicorn may be different than someone else, because the qualities that I'm going to value the most are going to be the things that are the most relevant to me. But again, I can't be so strict and say, okay, here's my criteria list of 10 things. You have to have all 10.
You gotta have all 10, right?
Maybe you have to have all 10 in varying degrees or different ways. Like maybe there's some that you can't be devoid of. Like you have, for me, it would be an absolute requirement that you have a sense of humor. Like it wouldn't even be on the table. I wouldn't care how hot you were. If you didn't have a sense of humor, if I couldn't make a joke, if you were offended by everything I said, it's off the table. It's just, it's not even a thing. Whereas some people might not say that. They may say like, yeah, no, I don't care, because they're not funny, or they're not worried about making jokes. They're just like, yeah, I just want someone hot with me,
Right. I like you said, being with someone who lets you be yourself, that's everything.
That's going to be your unicorn, right? It's like whatever you define, like that hierarchy of who you are and how much that person can either complement who you are or also allow you to have the growth to be who you are.
For sure.
So.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Khalil. Thank you so much for listening to this video. I definitely want you to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more content like this. But if this content had any value to you, click the like button as well.